Funding for this program provided by. Support for this program also made possible by. Additional support provided by.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. I reached a point where I could see that I had to talk to God in a real hurry. I remember looking up to God, and I yelled, God, no matter what it is you want me to do, I'll do it.
Omaha Beach, the Normandy coast of France. This 4-mile stretch of sand represents the courage, sacrifice, and determination of a generation. It also reminds us that the price paid in the pursuit of freedom can be overwhelming. It was here American boys landed on June 6, 1944. Now, some 7 decades later, the old soldiers are returning, many for the final time.
How are you?
The men of D-Day are no longer wide-eyed teenagers full of adrenaline and fear. Their pace is slowed. They are thankful for long lives full of love, laughter, and family. But not a day goes by where their thoughts don't return to the faces of friends who never had the same opportunity. For the veterans of the American 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions, Omaha Beach is never far from their thoughts or nightmares. They landed here on D-Day and saw the worst of it.
We didn't know exactly how bad it would be, but we expected it. We were told that a lot of us wouldn't be back.
On this very sand, American soldiers left behind their youth. Others saw their futures end here as well. June 6, 1944, remains a turning point in the history of the world. 11 months after Operation Overlord began, World War II in Europe was over. Here on this shoreline is where Nazi Germany's end began. On an overcast Tuesday morning in June of 1944, this roughly 7,000-yard stretch of coastline on the English Channel proved to be the Allies' biggest and bloodiest obstacle to success on D-Day. The 1st Infantry Division had been in this position before, so they were given the lead role. The 29th Infantry Division had yet to see any combat in World War II.
They had a good understanding that they were going to see the worst of it because obviously the Germans had 4 years to prepare, and making any amphibious assault and Operation in World War II was, problematic to say the least, and it was known to be a task that was only recently considered almost impossible.
The 1st Infantry Division had already made successful amphibious landings in North Africa in Operation Torch and in Sicily in Operation Husky. So they got Omaha Beach too.
That's what we were known for. Even Eisenhower said we were everywhere.
For D-Day veterans such as Morley Piper, returning here to France always brings about mixed emotions. Piper's thoughts drift back to what happened when he first stepped on French soil as a member of the 29th Infantry Division. He often wonders why he lived, while so many others did not.
The feeling that we're not going to make it was sort of all pervasive, not just on D-Day, but as the days lengthened into months and finally into a year. It's remarkable that I made it all the way through.
It's Omaha Beach that draws Morley Piper back. For the other D-Day veterans on Morley Piper's bus, there's not much talk about war, just quiet reflection. They know what lies ahead in this trip. They'll deal with that when the time comes. Here in France, a country liberated twice by American boys in 2 world wars, there remains deep respect for these Normandy veterans from the United States.
Thank you very much.
Omaha Beach, like the Eiffel Tower or Arc de Triomphe, remains a symbolic chapter in French history. It is at the Arc de Triomphe on a late May evening that traffic on Paris's famed Champs-Élysées comes to a virtual standstill in honor of these American veterans of the 29th Infantry Division. The Arc de Triomphe is Paris's monument to its own fallen soldiers. An eternal flame burns here for an unknown French soldier from the First World War. The 29th Infantry veterans, among them Hal Baumgarten, Morley Piper, and Steve Melnikoff, understand the importance of the ceremonies here, but more so, who they represent.
I'll tell you this. I tell my story because my story is the same story of a lot of guys who are not able to tell it. There might be Joe or Mike or Pete or whatever, like my friend Arthur or some of the other fellows that I lost. It's their story, but they never got any medals, they never got any, any shakes or any benefits from it. They were just left on the beach.
Remember them for sure, and remember the deeds and how they died, where they died. Yeah, they don't grow old like we grow old. Forever young.
The men who survived it knew they were lucky, and they knew that every moment that they went on to live and marry, raise families, they were fortunate men. You understand that when you look into their eyes that they miss their comrades in arms.
Omaha Beach is roughly a 3-hour drive northwest of Paris, about 165 miles through rolling countryside and picturesque farmland. In early June 1944, Normandy, France, and some stretch of beach given the code name Omaha was just a location on a map to 29th Infantry Division soldiers Morley Piper and Hal Baumgarten. Don McCarthy, also of the 29th, didn't know much about this part of the French coast either. All 1st Infantry Division Corporal Walter Scoudre knew was that somewhere across the English Channel there would be another beach assault. Ernie Corvese had dropped out of high school to join the United States Navy and had somehow volunteered for one of D-Day's most dangerous missions.
The funny thing is that I joined the Navy because I didn't want to go in the Army to carry a pack. I ended up with all those explosives on my back.
Walter Scoudre had already made 2 landings from the sea in World War II. Scoudre was considered an old man by his fellow soldiers in the 1st Infantry Division. He was 23. To the Germans, however, the 1st Infantry Division was already a thorn in their side in World War II.
And this German officer, he says, "How big is that 1st Infantry Division?" He says, "Wherever you go," he says, "the 1st Infantry is there." He says, and whenever we met the 1st Infantry Division, we had trouble.
On D-Day Eve, Morley Piper of the 29th Infantry Division's 115th Regiment was a 19-year-old second lieutenant.
Like everybody else, I guess, of thinking of home and what was coming. I guess we knew what was coming, but till you get there, you really never know quite what to expect.
Harold Howell Bumgarden, Jewish from the Bronx in New York City, was a pretty good baseball player in his day, even getting a tryout at Yankee Stadium. But it was the Army who drafted him first in 1943. A year later, the 19-year-old private and rifleman in Company B of the 116th Regiment of the 29th Infantry Division was barely alive on Omaha Beach.
I couldn't talk about it years ago. I used to cry. Now I can talk about it. It's a cathartic thing to be able to speak about it.
Like Hal Bumgarden, 20-year-old Don McCarthy was in the 116th Regiment of the 29th Infantry Division, but in the Intelligence and Reconnaissance Unit of Headquarters Company of the 1st Battalion.
We could see that the seas were not pleasant at all. We realized that this is going to be brutal if we have to go in this type of weather.
In the English Channel in the very early morning hours on June 6, 1944, the men of the Green 29th Infantry Division were leaving transport ships and boarding landing craft assault boats, or LCAs, for the 12-mile trip to Omaha Beach. The 29th was assigned the western landing zones along Omaha Beach.
I guess we knew what was coming, but till you get there, you really never know quite what to expect. It's usually a lot different than what you think it's going to be. We knew all along we were going to be in for a dreadful time, but as I say, until you're there, you don't know the enormity of it.
Walter Scudra's veteran 1st Infantry Division was bound for the eastern end of Omaha, aboard flat-bottomed landing craft known as Higgins boats. Like the 29th Infantry Division, the 1st Infantry Division's mission was to open up several exits, also called draws, off the beach as quickly as possible, so American soldiers could drive inland into France. By 5:30 a.m., both divisions' landing craft were on their way to the eastern and western ends of Omaha. Some 3,000 men made up the first wave. The 1st Infantry Division had made these amphibious landings before, but this assault would be unlike Africa and Italy. Waiting for both the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions in the bluffs above the beach, from east to west, were thousands of German soldiers from 2 infantry divisions, including the battle-tested 352nd. The Germans were positioned in trenches atop the bluffs. They were also watching and waiting in large concrete bunkers and dozens of pillboxes and strategically placed mortar pits. Omaha Beach was also defended by multi-barrel rocket launchers called Screaming Mimis and nearly 100 machine gun nests, most set up with German MG-42s, which could fire more than 1,200 rounds a minute. The MG-42's well-earned nickname was Hitler's buzzsaw. Every single inch of Omaha Beach was zeroed in with interlocking crossfire and pre-targeted artillery. The 1st Infantry Division's 16th Infantry Regiment would be the first wave in on the eastern end of Omaha.
Don't think that I wasn't scared. You're scared, but you just go. That's all. You don't think about it. I didn't think about it. A lot of guys did. Some guys broke down, but I don't know why I didn't break down, but I went through. I say either make it or I don't.
Both the American 1st Infantry and 29th Infantry Divisions were scheduled to land around 6:30 a.m., 1 hour after low tide. American soldiers would have to cross anywhere from 200 to 300 yards of open sand to find any protection. Strewn across Omaha Beach were some 10,000 mines and miles of barbed wire to slow them down. Even getting the soldiers ashore was problematic, as thousands of landing craft barriers, many of them mined, were in the water protecting Omaha's shoreline. For German soldiers looking down from these bluffs on the eastern end of Omaha Beach, on June 6, 1944, near the seaside village of Colville-sur-Mer, it would be like shooting big fish in a small barrel. One of their first targets on this section of beach, codenamed Easy Red, would be U.S. Navy Combat Demolition Unit engineer Ernie Corvese and his 8-man Gap Assault Unit, who were given the unlucky designation of Team 13.
Our job was to clear out all the obstacles so the infantry could land. A lot of people don't know about that, but the outfit I was in, Navy Combat Demolition, today they're called SEALs. Same thing, just about there.
It's taken 70 years, but Ernie Corvese has finally returned to Omaha Beach.
I guess I was just lucky.
He's never wanted to come back here until now. His wife Dolores has traveled with him.
Beautiful though, isn't it?
Oh, now it is.
Yeah, yeah, you have to think of it that way, huh?
Yeah.
That it is beautiful.
Yeah. It was my turn to jump off the boat landing craft, and I tripped. I fell headfirst into the water, and just at that time, there was this explosion. I found out later that it hit a rubber life raft full of our equipment. And I went to the bottom, and just before I fell, I unbuckled my web belt. The only thing I didn't unloosen was my chin strap. My helmet got full of water, and I sank to the bottom. With all the weight I had 50 pounds of explosives on my back, a rifle, a canteen, ammunition. That weighed me all down. Someone pulled me back up.
When Ernie Corvese resurfaced, the 7 other men with him and his unit's small rubber boat filled with explosives were gone. German artillery had scored a direct hit, igniting all the demolition charges on Team 13's raft. 7 friends and fellow soldiers Ernie had trained with for months were no longer anywhere to be seen. If there was any question as to why it took Ernie Corvese so long to come back to Normandy, the countless nightmares over 7 decades provides one answer.
I didn't know what was going on. He would just yell and scream and try to get out of bed, and I don't know who he was going after. Sometimes I got hit by him while he was asleep, not knowing he was doing it. And it was really tough. It was tough, and yet I didn't know anything about this. He had never told me these stories.
I crawled almost the whole length of that beach because they were hitting us so hard. It was unbelievable to get through the fire. We had 88s, machine guns. They were throwing everything at us.
Ernie Corvese, the only survivor of NCDU Team 13, spent the next 12 hours pinned down on Omaha Beach in front of these German bunkers and machine gun nests.
And I was laying there, and maybe about 5 yards from me were 2 medics taking care of this GI that was laying on the ground, and a shell came and killed him instantly. And yeah, killed all 3 of them. And I got hit. I got hit in the fanny with a piece of shrapnel. It didn't go in me. It landed flat. I reached back to pick it up, and I burned my hand. And that first day, I was still on the beach. I spent the night in the foxhole, and I went looking for the rest of the unit. Couldn't find anybody.
A lot of firing. Ships, planes, strafing. Well, how are you going to explain it? And machine guns coming from the beach and that?
Down on the western end of Omaha, just after 6:30 a.m., the men of Company A of the 116th Regiment of the 29th Infantry Division approached their assigned landing zone below another seaside village, Vogels. Hal Baumgarten's Company B followed in the second wave.
We had a 3-hour boat trip in, from the His Majesty's ship Javelin. And the poor guys got seasick,
Vomiting would be the least of Hal Baumgarten's issues when the ramps on his landing craft went down. This part of Omaha, too, was also heavily defended with strategically placed pillboxes and bunkers high in the bluffs. MG-42 machine guns and trenches were zeroed in on every inch of the 300 yards of open beach 29th soldiers would have to cross to reach their first objective. Securing the Dog 1 or D1 draw, a paved road leading directly through the bluff 600 yards inland to Vierville-sur-Mer, would prove to be a deadly job. Vierville-sur-Mer was a picture postcard seaside village before World War II came to France in 1940. A centuries-old Norman church was the center of the community. By the time Hal Baumgarten arrived on French soil, most of his division's first wave was already dead, and German MG-42 bullets buzzed around his head like swarms of angry bees.
The thing that was frightening was the German machine gun. They never let us hear a German machine gun. And it was like zip, and it was very frightening.
The casualty rate on the very western end of Omaha Beach was nearing 80% for the 29th Infantry Division in the first 15 minutes of landing. To the east, 50% of the first wave of the 1st Infantry Division were already casualties. Hal Baumgarten was one of just 2 soldiers from his landing craft who survived the opening moments of D-Day on Omaha Beach.
Like when I look at Dog Green Sector, I see all the bodies. It's so it's kind of sad each time. For example, on Dog Green Sector, you know, we lost 85% casualties in the first 15 minutes, including 19 boys from Bedford and 6 seriously wounded. We were supposed to land with 720 men over there, but Company C and Company D got lost, and Company A lost 3 boats to drowning. Company B lost 2 boats, and finally one hit a mine and blew up, and we were showered with wood, metal, and body parts and blood. And then when the ramps went down, both company commanders were killed immediately. All the officers were killed except Second Lieutenant William Williams of Virginia. And all the non-coms were killed except for 3 sergeants. Clarence Robeson of Lynchburg, Virginia, and John Roach of Florida, and Bill Presley, First Sergeant of Company B from California. And later on, all these people got killed because half the beach was obstacles, the other half was mined. And then they had telescopic sights up there in the trenches 60 feet above the beach, so that even the flamethrower guys coming in, their fuel tanks were hit, and we smelled burning flesh because they were cremated. So I didn't get wounded until I was half over the beach. Both men, one on each side of me, got shot in the chest. I got shot in the rifle. It vibrated, I turned it around. My 7 bullets in the magazine section saved my life. And so I didn't get wounded until after I hit the ground. I looked up at the pillbox number 73 on the right flank, and a 88 went off in front of me, ripped his cheek off, ripped the upper jaw off, hole in the roof of the mouth, teeth and gums on my tongue. And then I saw Clarence Robeson, that's one of the sergeants, get cut in half while he was praying with his rosary beads.
Don McCarthy and Headquarters Company of the 1st Battalion of the 116th Regiment of the 29th Infantry Division were scheduled to land just to the east of Hal Baumgarten, but McCarthy's boat was rerouted. The detour probably saved McCarthy's life.
As we came in, we swamped. We went off off to port, and the boat rolled over, and we all went in the water. Fortunately, I got rid of my vest, got rid of all the stuff that I had with me. All I have on is my helmet, which I tied on tight. I got rid of the combat jacket, my rifle, everything, and into the water, and saw that a lot of the guys had gone in with too much weight on them, and the next thing I know, there's his feet appearing. And I grabbed one kid that was next to me.
Don McCarthy reached for one of the many soldiers who was already dead due to drowning.
And I grabbed him and used him as a shield. This bothered me more than anything else. It really bothered me for the longest time. It was only a recent, maybe 20 years ago, that I was able to deal with that and talk about it. But I used him as a body, like a body shield. And we swam into the beach, and I pushed him as far as I could. We were probably in about 10 or 15 feet of water. And I swam the best I could. And the water was bloody and oily. And
after making it to shore, McCarthy had to crawl back towards Vogels.
I yelled, "God, no matter what it is you want me to do, I'll do it, forever or the rest of my life." And almost instantly, the Navy had shot down smoke flares way down below the beach near Vogels. And the smoke had drifted up by us. At that point, Colonel Cannon, who was my regimental commander, had come along in the smoke and said, "Okay, guys, get off the beach, get your ass up here, get up to the beach and run." And it was almost simultaneously. And he yelled, "29, let's go." And we did.
All these guys that you knew as your friends, you trained with them, and they're laying dead.
Morley Piper's landing craft came ashore that same morning.
When the ramp went down and we started coming in, I think organization kind of went up in smoke. Everybody was running around with survival on their minds more than anything else. No, you tend to pray a little.
The beaches of northern France are alive right now with Allied troops. Allied troops landing in wave after wave.
By mid-morning on Omaha Beach, more than 1,000 Americans from the 29th and 1st Infantry Divisions were dead or wounded. The 9,387 graves in the American cemetery in Normandy is often the first stop when D-Day veterans return to Omaha Beach. Many 1st and 29th Infantry Division men are buried here, and how they ended up under these white crosses and stars of David remains etched in the minds of those who saw them cut down.
It's a trip full of emotion, bittersweet. I'm very glad to come back to sort of renew memories and kind of a closure in a way, to visit graves of people I knew.
It's taken many decades, but U.S. Navy combat demolition engineer Ernie Corvese is finally able to visit a couple of the graves of Gap Assault Team 13 here in the Normandy Cemetery, including that of Andrew Fleming and Harold Duncan.
Beautiful. Yeah. They all line up no matter which way you look. What is it, about 9,000?
Several of Corvese's other Navy buddies he landed with on the eastern end of Omaha Beach were never found. So Ernie also spends part of his time in another section of the American cemetery, a garden area known as the Wall of the Missing. Here are the names of 1,557 American soldiers who remain missing in action. Here, Ernie Corvesi is finally able to physically and emotionally reconnect with his crew.
I don't see it. Oh, yeah. Right there. Preston. That's him. This one here. We were a unit. You had to be. You just had to be. You depended on one another. There's him, Hickey. About a week before D-Day, he joined our unit. He was gung-ho. Kid was gung-ho. Yeah. I don't know how I got through it. You know, we landed, but the infantry, they just kept coming in, and getting mowed down. Even the third wave, those guys got murdered.
Morley Piper has been back to Normandy many times.
My family's with me, as you know.
This time, 4 generations of Piper's family have returned to Omaha Beach with him.
He didn't open up very much, but it opened my eyes and my imagination, just trying to understand what he might have lived through, which is, of course, impossible. But it made me want to, try to.
Well, I think it's nice for them to see where the old man was, and for one, and recognize the enormity and the complexity of the war, why it was fought and how it was won, price of freedom. I'd like them to form a bond here in Normandy and come back when I'm not here.
My heart aches for him now because I know he's feeling so much, and it's very hard to get there emotionally, because I'm in France and it's all wonderful, and we're free and happy, and it's just hard to go back in one's mind when you didn't live those experiences. And I try very hard to imagine what he went through.
The sacrifices made by men like Morley Piper on D-Day is not lost on his family or the people of Normandy. Especially in Virville-sur-Mer, where heroes are welcomed back with gratitude just yards away from where they landed on June 6, 1944. It's the same reception in other villages and towns liberated by the Americans on D-Day. Places like St. Clair, where Morley Piper's sacrifice will live on long after he has passed.
You still see vestiges of what took place. I've got a lot of memories, bad memories of some of those little towns that we went through.
He found himself in the first wave of the 29th Division to land on Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944. We have all heard and read about what took place then, but only he, his fellow soldiers, and the people of Normandy can describe that day as they lived it, and the terrible long battles that followed across France and other parts of Europe, until war's end.
I guess it's a very nice feeling, a good feeling to realize that we have a good relationship, a bond with the Norman people. It's a close bond, actually. You know, they like Americans probably more than any place else in the world.
Hal Bumgarden's trips to Normandy are always bittersweet. Blessed with what he calls a photographic memory, Bumgarden can recall exactly where on this section of the western end of Omaha Beach his buddies died on D-Day. He even remembers their hometowns. Many fell by this monument to the 29th Infantry Division's National Guard lineage.
When I got to the seawall near D1, under the National Guard monument. We got up on that wall. There were, one of my best buddies had his face shot off. He died about 10 minutes after I got there. The other fellas on the wall, Gilbert Pittenger of New Ringgold, Pennsylvania, a fellow named Zimzak of Pennsylvania, Freddie Kaufman of New York, they were still alive, but they were all wounded. At the bottom of the wall, on the sand, was my best buddy on D-Day, laying face down in the sand with all his equipment on. It's sad. I still, when I go to Dog Green Sector, I can picture all the bodies laying there, and I know exactly where each man got killed.
On an overcast June day in Vierville-sur-Mer, the newest monument in Normandy, France, is delivered. The statue honors the men of the 116th Infantry Regiment.
What it depicts is interesting, though. It's one 29er watching out for another, which I can appreciate.
Hal Baumgarten happens to be there. The monument will be officially dedicated in an upcoming ceremony on D-Day's 70th anniversary.
I think it's a worthwhile tribute to the 116th. The sacrifice made to take this beach. I tried to charge over this wall, and there was machine gun fire on it. A fellow named Gilbert Pittenger jumped on top and tackled me, jumped on top of me, kept me from getting killed. So one guy watches out for the other in the 29th.
Living through D-Day would directly impact the lives of all those who spent any time on Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944.
Well, I was just a young kid, an undeveloped life. I guess it certainly did shape my life. But, hard to describe in what kind of ways, but it did certainly shape my life. I had certainly matured very fast. Grew to know fear and determination, persistence.
Like Hal Baumgarten and Morley Piper, Omaha Beach is something Don McCarthy has thought about every day of his life. McCarthy was wounded on D-Day, the victim of German artillery.
Several boats coming in, and the Jerry started popping overheads at us. And, I got whacked in the leg.
Over here, Don.
Exactly 70 years later, McCarthy is on Omaha Beach again. Hal Baumgarten, Morley Piper, and Steve Melnikoff are here too, and they are not alone. Hundreds joined them as a toast with the region's famous Calvados apple brandy is raised.
We stand in the presence of giants. We proudly follow in your footsteps. You are a band of brothers. You are the 29th. You are the blue and the gray. 29. Let's go! Go!
Surreal, all these people and these guys with me. Very special moment in my life. I'm so filled with joy right now. I can hardly control myself. I asked God that I would do whatever He wanted me to do in my life. If He'd get me off the beach, And he sure as did. Brought me here today. That's all I can ask for. I got my family here. You know, the whole bunch of us that were fortunate enough that God blessed us to get here.
A few minutes later, the official dedication of the new 116th statue is held.
As you view the piece from the front, the soldier standing represents the determination of all of these gentlemen. They were never going to stop. They were not going to surrender. They were going to make it through this draw, which they did that day. And the expression on that soldier's face is to show you the determination of all of the men that were on the beach that day. One thing that these guys always did was take care of each other. They were brothers.
Nobody will ever know what they did, who they were. Somebody's got to talk about it. And I figured God saved me for two reasons: become a physician and help people, and to let people know who these guys were.
The legacy of these soldiers is something United States President Barack Obama spoke of during his speech in the Normandy American Cemetery, marking D-Day's 7-decade anniversary. Off the president's left shoulder, saluting, is Morley Piper.
Remember them well, a lot of them. Sad about every one of them, inexpressibly sad to see all those, how many, 9,000 graves? 9,000 graves. Most of them 29ers, represented more than any other branch of service in the cemetery.
On the eastern end of Omaha Beach, Ernie Corvese walks where decades ago he crawled just to stay alive. This time, Ernie is joined by veteran NBC television news journalist and author Tom Brokaw, who first assigned the label of the greatest generation to Corvese and the men and women who won World War II. It's a surreal moment for Ernie and his wife Dolores. Ernie Corvese had never wanted to come back to Normandy.
So when you resisted coming back, do you think it would just be too hard emotionally for you?
Yes, yes. It is now.
And it still is?
Yes. As I'm laying there, this guy, I don't know who he was an officer. And he stood up and he said, there are two kind of people on this beach. Those that are dead, those that are going to be dead. Let's
His
get
name was
going.
George Taylor. We know who he was.
Oh.
He was a colonel in the 1st Division.
Oh, yeah, I heard him say that.
You heard him say that?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
About 10 miles from Omaha Beach is the German cemetery at La Combe. More than 21,000 Germans are buried here. Many of these soldiers battled the American 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions beginning at sunrise on the morning of June 6, 1944. In the village of La Combe, a short distance away from the German cemetery, the mood is much more upbeat. Liberated on June 8th by the 175th Regiment of the 29th Infantry Division, the battle for Normandy is never far from the thoughts of those who live here. These soldiers will never pass into history. They will always have a home here.
In homage to the brave soldiers of the 29th U.S. Infantry Division, it was decided to rename this square, up till now called the Square of the Church, and from now on it is going to be called the Square of the 29th Division, Blue and Gray.
It affects me the fact that they'll, love us so much. They really do. And yes, it is moving for me.
Scenes like the one in Macomb are repeated in villages all over Normandy and in large cities such as St. Lo and Vera. Vera was left devastated after brutal fighting between the 29th Infantry Division and its German occupiers in August of 1944.
It is our duty as representatives of the people gathered here together to keep the word written with the blood of these fighters. Let us be faithful to their sacrifice, building in their name and in the name of our future generations a world that is more just and more humane. But allow me also to turn my thoughts towards all those who survived, very often injured in body and bruised in soul. They carry the souvenir of their missing brothers in arms.
Among those watching closely are a group of students from George Washington University. These young men and women, many veterans themselves of war in the 21st century, spent a week following these D-Day survivors around Normandy, witnessing for themselves the reverence given these soldiers who fought for France's liberation.
I guess the hope of some of the younger generation of veterans is that we can sort of live up to that standard that World War II veterans set for us. So I like to know about what they did in their lives after the war, and what they're doing now, and if they're enjoying the trip here, and what kind of feelings and emotions it brings back to them.
The French people are extremely appreciative, for lack of a better term. They adore the veterans who served here, and they adore sort of the ideals of democracy and liberty that the United States celebrates as well.
At every event we've gone to, every town, all the residents are coming out to pay their respects to the veterans. When the national anthem is played, the Star-Spangled Banner, the French people, they're singing it, and they know the lyrics better than a lot of Americans. And I'm not sure if I've ever seen so many American flags flying, and they're flying alongside the flags of the UK and France and Canada and even Germany.
The church in Vierville-sur-Mer holds a special place in the hearts and minds of 29th Infantry Division men who have come back to Normandy. Reaching it was one of their main objectives on D-Day. It remains a symbolic place tinged by victory and loss.
The 29th Division was there. I was exhausted and scared and wet and I don't know what all, cold. But in some ways I was elated. That's kind of an odd way to put it, but I was elated that I had made it through that terrible day.
You figure how short life is, and you got to live it every day. And that's the way I felt.
Looking down on the eastern end of Omaha Beach at the end of the day on June 6, 1944, Navy Combat Demolition Unit crewman Ernie Corvasi had a profound sense of relief that he was still alive.
They wanted to give me a Purple Heart, but I refused it. I didn't get wounded. They gave me a job and I had to do my job. When I got out of the service, I went back to high school and I finished.
"31 Naval Combat Demolition Unit men were killed and 60 wounded on D-Day, a casualty rate of 52%. The NCDUs are honored on a monument to the United States Navy at Utah Beach. First Infantry Division veteran Walter Scudra has never forgotten the men whose lives ended on Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944.
My rosary nights, when I say the prayers, I pray still. I don't pray for the guys that on holidays. I pray for them every night. I even pray for the people that were in the concentration camps that got killed by the Nazis. And I say, and God bless the people that didn't make it back home. Every night, not on holidays, every night.
For these veterans, coming back to Normandy fulfills a lifelong responsibility to their friends and fellow soldiers under the White Crosses, Stars of David, and on the wall of the missing. The real heroes, all D-Day veterans say.
You see, there's Duncan, Fleming, Golda, Herring.
I didn't talk about D-Day until 1988, 44 years later.
I would like to extend our appreciation to the Association de Mur for building and maintaining this wonderful wall in our honor.
I thought all my life how did I make it and so many others didn't. And I don't have the answer to that, but I've thought about it all my life.
It is a place that speaks to the spirit.
Don McCarthy understands war is random in who it selects to live and who will die. He lived while other 29th Infantry Division soldiers to the left and right of him on Omaha Beach did not.
And I yelled, God, no matter what it is you want me to do, I'll do it forever or the rest of my life. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for
That
us.
is why, almost every day since the end of World War II, you will find Don McCarthy in church saying his rosary. He sits in his pew to honor a promise he made in the early morning hours of D-Day, when a very scared 20-year-old pleaded with God to save his life. He also prays each day for those who asked for the same thing he did on that morning, but never got to live a full life and remain in Normandy, close by to where they fell, on June 6, 1944. Right here on this stretch of sand, known forever in history as Omaha Beach.
When you find your way through this life you make, I hope you live each day for all it's worth. Go where your heart leads and dream your wildest dreams, and all of these things I will pray for you. And when your time is through, my final wish for you is to count your blessings, not your regrets, with peace inside your soul and all that heaven holds. I hope you'll always know I will pray for you. I will pray for you. I will pray for you through every darkness, through every light. This road ahead of you, I cannot carry you, but I hope
Funding for this program provided by. Support for this program also made possible by additional support provided by